severability clause in your contract, you may have now just completely voided
The whole
your ability to collect payment. Your contract no longer exists and you can't enforce it because you had a term in there that was not legally binding and it voided the entire thing.
We are chatting today about all things UGC legal. I'm Denise, a UGC creator, and this is Alyssa. She is an attorney, an expert on things creator in the creator realm, I guess. And she helps us answer all these questions. So let's get started a little bit. Tell us a little bit about your background and just let's get started there.
Okay, perfect. Well, first off, thank you so much for hosting this. I know the last one that we did on Twitter Space was just phenomenal. So I've been like counting down the days to do another one with you and finally reached 1,000 followers. Now I can actually see you while we're talking.
Yeah.
Right, it's so much better. But a little bit my background, I've been a practicing attorney for over 10 years. I specialize in civil litigation, a lot of business contract work. Um, and I recently got into the creator space, I think within the last like 7 or 8 months of really honing in on offering like legal services and legal templates to online creatives and online businesses. So that's kind of where I found you and the kind of the community to, kind of share some of the legal side of doing business.
I've seen that you've put out like a few templates. Tell me a little bit of like what are the new stuff that you're putting out? Because I'm
Oh,
always seeing that you're putting some like stuff. I'm like, oh my god, that's so helpful. That's super cool.
well, it really is coming from you guys or from followers who are DMing me and they're like, "Hey, do you have this?" And I'm like, no, but I can." Like, I'm an attorney, so I know how to do all this stuff. So really, my business is growing as people ask for stuff. So I know my most recent one was I was getting inquiries on forming LLCs, and so that's one of my new services. Making it affordable, or even if you don't want to hire an attorney or someone like myself, really helping you with your DIY LLC with checklists and figuring out like step by step like what makes you legal. So that's my new stuff that I've been pumping out. The last one I had was a demands letters package, which I recently launched, which basically, if as a creator, you're starting to get ghosted or you're not hearing back from a brand, it's really good to have a very forceful letter to send. And there's two in that series to customize that sound lawyerly, because you want to sound very
Dating.
professional and forceful, right? Yeah, exactly. And then I recently put out a UGC Bundle Plus, so it's not just the training and the the fundamentals of a contract and really just doing just the legal training because that's included in the first one that I launched. But this plus now has the the demand letters. It has the client testimonials so that you can get legal testimonials from your brands or clients so that you can use that as social proof. I also included an independent contractor agreement because people were asking about that. For instance, if you're hiring a videographer or a video editor or a virtual assistant, you want to make sure that you have a contract that says who owns whatever they're producing, right?
Nice.
Which is you're going to want it to be you because the law is whoever creates it owns it. And so with that contract, you're protecting yourself. And I'm obviously I can go on for days about that, but that's just kind of it in a nutshell.
Nice. I know those. I mean, those sound awesome. I didn't know you had the one for the third party people. I'm like, I need to go download some of these. So
Right?
that's awesome. So you just recently reached 1,000, which allowed us to have the live. So you know, I guess let's start off by talking like four, or I don't know, you tell me how many like must haves in a contract when you're doing a brand deal with with any brand, if you're sending the contract to them, and then we'll talk like what we should look for when they send a contract to you.
Okay. So are you saying like in your contract, what are
Yeah.
some must-haves?
Yeah.
Okay. So this is a great topic. I actually recently did a blog on it. Because there really are some very fundamental ones that you want. So obviously some of the obvious ones are the scope of work and your payment terms, right? So a lot of times with the scope of work, what people are missing is they're missing out on the specificity. So you really want to get down to exactly what your deliverables are. You want to get down on your time frame exactly. If you're waiting to see products, you want to wait until you get delivery before your timetable starts. You want to be very specific as to maybe even what ratio, what platform they're doing, how many of them, maybe a time limit, maybe 15 to 30 seconds, or if you're doing a minute, and just really be very specific as possible. Then you're going to want to look at your payment. Your payment terms are going to be obviously when you get paid. Most people don't miss out on that one, but again, it's going to be the specificity of how
Right.
and when you're going to get paid. So,
Yeah.
does the brand need to approve it before you get paid, or is there a term in there where yes, there's brand approval, but you're going to be paid regardless? Are you going to be paid 50% up front or 50% at the end? I've seen a lot of UGC creators actually getting paid like 30 days after, which is typically influencers.
Right.
And
That's
so
what
I'm a
I was
little
gonna say. Yeah.
concerned about that.
I
I'm
actually,
concerned.
yeah. Yeah. Well, so I actually got a deal. It seems to be like the bigger brands are doing that because they're used to working with
I,
influencers, I think.
I think that's
And
what it is.
yeah, and they're like trying to translate. Like I tried to negotiate it with a big brand. I mean, I'm gonna just say that because I like it. It's the Inky List. I don't know if you know them. They're like a kind of like a competitor to the Ordinary. Um,
Okay.
and yeah, so they were like, oh well, okay, well net 30. I'm like, oh, but like I'm gonna send this to you. You're gonna use it,
Yeah.
and and they're like, okay, yeah, but we usually do net 30, and I'm like, okay, well, I'm not gonna fight you on this because I want to work with you guys, but yeah, it seems to be the big brand, and I had another bigger brand do that too, and I explained it to them, and they're like, oh, okay, fine, well, like 14 days after. I was like, okay, that's better than 30 days after, but
Right.
yeah,
Yeah, it seems to be a carryover because they're so used to working with influencers. And with influencers, there's a campaign series, right? And so
right.
they're looking at the analytics of how did the campaign do, and they're making sure that they get paid for those 30, 60, 90 to a year days that they purchased it to be on because they don't have the control. But with UGC, it's not the same thing. So it's like when you hand over that content, you guys should be done. Like that's when it should be terminated or whatnot. So yeah, that's something obviously to address in your contract. So let me see. So we did scope of work, payment terms. You're also going to want to include terms and termination. So another thing is you want this to be a very finite partnership, right? Especially as a UGC creator. So you're going to want to say what the term is, and if you do hybrid like influencer stuff, obviously this will change your
Mm-hmm.
terms, which again is um, it's up to you. So
Well,
with
yeah.
the termination, you're going to want to have it terminate as soon as you send the deliverables or whenever you're done with however long, if you're doing influencer type stuff as well, you're going to want to also include that as your term. Let me see what else. So the fourth one I would look for is obviously indemnification. This is a very big one because I know a lot of people get concerned over the language, and it's literally probably one of the most important terms in the contract. And I know it can be a little scary because there's a lot of legalese that comes to that, and a lot of legal knowledge with drafting it. And this is where creators, I think, get the most mixed up because oftentimes the brands are the big Hercules, right? And so like they're coming in, they have more experience with contracts, or they have more experience with drafting things for their protection. And when
They have
you as a
business
UGC
behind them.
creator come in, yeah, you see that it's there. Um, it's difficult to one know and understand what indemnification is, which really just goes to third parties. It's not between the two of you. It's when someone else sues you or sues them. And what you're going to want to look for is that you're not taking on any and all liability, you
Right.
know? So, cut that out. It's negotiable. Like these are not things that are set in stone. This is a contract. And they should be negotiating it with you. So you're going to want to make sure if they are hard pressed on keeping that in there and saying, no, we want you to indemnify us, then you just want to make sure that you limit it to only things that you're responsible for. So making sure that you're not taking on the liability or stuff that they should be blamed for,
Mhm.
right? So make sure that they're blamed for the stuff that they're
Right.
doing, and then I guess realistically you should, maybe be taking on the liability for stuff that you did, but
Yeah.
contracts are contracts. So technically you could switch and say, no, brand, you take over all liability, even if it's my fault, because guess what? That's what they're doing to you.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I've actually done that before. Like I've just taken out the whole part about like mutually kind of thing, and it's like, no, I mean, because technically, yes, you made it and all that, but they're the ones running the ads on it. They're the ones putting it out into the public, so
right.
they should know the rules that come along with that. Like I don't necessarily know all the SEC rules and all that kind of stuff that go, not SEC,
The FTC.
the FCC. There you go.
Yeah.
The FCC rules that go with putting stuff out. So, like how it's like how am I going to be responsible for that? So as much as I can, I put it on the brand. I think I've only ever had one brand be like, hey, we need to put mutual here. I was like, oh yeah, okay, fine. But most
Hey,
like
well, good
my
for
contract,
you.
yeah, my contract does not include it, and none of the brands have ever come back on me for it. So
Good.
yeah,
Awesome.
yeah,
Yeah, because if usually when they want to include it, it's in their favor. So then you try and do it so that it's in your favor for everything. And
right,
then when they don't do that, then you get to the third where it's like, okay, it's mutual, but it's mutual only for things that are my fault, not for things that were your fault. So then that's where it gets sticky, where you want to do that. And like you said, so the whole like being like it being your fault, it isn't your fault when it comes to advertising and FTC disclosures if you are truly a UGC.
yep,
It only comes into play if you're doing influencer type marketing in addition to your UGC. So you really shouldn't be taking on liability for that.
yeah, yeah, exactly.
So that's probably one of the most important things. That can be something that your $150 deal just cost you $50,000 and without realizing it.
No,
Because or more, or more if they get sued and they're like, hey, you agreed to take on our attorney's fees, our attorney's costs, and
yeah,
you agreed to pay all damages to this third party. Here you go.
yeah,
So really important. I would say the next thing to include would be an independent contractor clause. So with this one, you're basically stating, I'm not an employee and I'm an independent contractor and you can't dictate me what I can and cannot do. Now, that doesn't mean they can't have a creative brief or they can't say, hey, this is this is what I want in the content, right? Like that's not telling you
right, right,
telling you how and where and when to do something
right.
would be like, hey, Denise, on Thursday is when you're recording our video. And then from 5 to 7, you're going to be editing it. And then by 7, we want our first draft. And then, that's what I mean by that. And
What if
then
you
I would,
don't include something like that? I mean, it might has it, but that's not something that's like common sense. I think. I mean, what if you just don't include that? Like,
um,
what
it's
repercussions could you get?
So it's not make or break. What it does for you is it protects you if the brand is trying to dictate things to you.
Got it.
And so it also makes it very clear that you as a UGC creator are being hired as a contractor.
Yeah,
You're being hired as a third party. They do not own you and that they don't own your work product. So, as an employee, if you're working for the brand, what I was just talking about earlier about independent contractor agreements is that if you're an employee, typically in the eyes of the law, the employer is going to own the stuff that you produce, right? And there's going to be different kinds of things. That's a whole nother topic I could get into. But essentially, what it's saying is that we know that we're separate businesses. We know that I'm paying my own taxes. We know that um, I'm also paying for my work product or to my equipment, right? And so really actually also helps you when it comes to the tax liabilities and other insurance requirements under the state. And it also is going to help inform the broader state laws. So it really isn't just a provision. It's something that you also need to be aware of and to comply with, because in certain states like California, they're very employee friendly, meaning even if you have an independent contractor agreement in it and then the brand is dictating things to you, you or the brand are going to get heavily fined for improperly labeling you as an employee or improperly labeling you as an independent contractor. So really, it's just for both parties to be on the same page
Okay.
when it comes to what they're purchasing from you.
So that's a biggie to put in there. Yeah. Because I've always touched on the first four that you mentioned, but this one I've never like thought to mention it. But now that you're mentioning I mean, it makes sense.
It's just, I mean, because it comes down to, what are contracts? Contracts are really just forming the relationship and really making sure that both of you have the same expectations and you're on the same page. So I feel like by including that, you're making it very clear what it is they're purchasing from you, which is just
So,
your
yeah.
work, your services, and to treat you as a professional and to treat you as the separate business that you are.
Right. Nice. So those are the five.
Yeah.
Those
So, and
those are
then I'm like, I need to look at my blog. Off the top of my head, I guess another one would be, um, let's see, would be the limitation of liability, which I know a lot of people already know about. But here's a new one. Okay, so another one. So it's hard to go through contracts because before I answer that, I know that it can be intimidating because there could be like 4 pages of legalese, right? Or legal jargon.
right.
But really, at the end of the day, that legal jargon is what makes it a valid contract.
Okay.
Okay. And so you don't want to be missing those things. And
Yeah.
so one of another super important one that I include in my templates is severability. Now, severability is going to be one of those ones that you're just like, oh, we don't need to include that. Like, that's just in legal jargon. So let me say why it's important. Well, it actually might be important for you not to include it as well, depending on your circumstances. So this is kind of where like you got to put your lawyer hat on.
Okay.
So so you're going to want to include it when you want your contracts to be enforceable regardless. Okay. And as a UGC working with a brand in another state or working somewhere else, you're going to want to look at the contract as a whole, right? Now, in certain states, certain things are not legally enforceable. So, off the top of my head, that would potentially be like a non-compete clause.
Okay.
Non-compete clause means that after you're done working with them over a certain number of time frames, you're not going to go into the same business and you're not going to compete with that brand or whatever. Okay. In some states, those are not enforceable. Okay. So if that's included in your contract and you're in that particular state, you may have now just completely voided your entire contract because it has like one clause that's not enforceable. So if you have not included a severability clause in your contract, you may have now just completely voided
The whole
your
contract.
ability to collect payment, your ability to be, yeah, you're basically your contract no longer exists and you can't enforce it because you had a term in there that was not legally binding and it voided the entire thing. So by including a severability clause, you then protect yourself. So say you do have that non-compete clause. Now the court takes it out. It like cuts it out and is like, okay, this one's void, but
Right.
we're going to put it over here. And your contract is still valid and we're going to go ahead and still enforce it and all that stuff. So
Okay.
I
I
think
didn't
that
know
would
that's what
be
it's called. I do have wording around that. Something. While you're going through these, I'm like, do I have that in my contract? Do I have that in my contract? And I do have words like that. It's not called the severability clause. I forgot what it's called. It is like its own little section, and it does say like if something is not okay, the rest of the contract still stands. So
it's
okay,
still valid.
yeah,
Perfect. Yeah.
okay. I'm like, oh my god, what is that? I don't have that. We can put that in there.
And then so I'd say the last one, so the seventh one is jurisdiction, since we're talking about that.
Mhm.
Jurisdiction is going to be another one of those things where you're going to want to include if there are issues in your contract, where do you want to enforce it? And I know a lot of times people will be like, "Oh, well, the deal's so small, what am I going to do to enforce it?" Well, you can go to small claims court, and it's going to really depend on this clause, whether it's enforceable in that state or what state law applies, right? So we have 50 states, which one applies? So this is where you're going to say the jurisdiction. So for me, I would say in the contract that it's the state of California. I would include a choice of law, which means that the state of California law is going to apply to my contract. And I would honestly get even more specific and say that the downtown San Diego County Courthouse, Superior Court Hall of Justice at 300 West Broadway is the only courthouse that you can take me to, because my
Okay.
butt is not going more than 10 miles
Yeah.
from my home. So,
Yeah.
so
Oh, that's
I mean, you
good.
can get really specific with that as well.
Nice. Okay. Yeah, I did read that one time. I forgot what it was, or like when I drafted mine up with my attorney like a few years ago. He was like, "Yeah, you got to put in where you want it, because otherwise they could take you wherever they are." I'm like, "Oh no, we're not gonna do that." Let's.
Right?
Yeah. So yeah, that's a good one too. I have that in there. That just says Florida though, so now I think I might want to just do it like
Hey,
my
Florida's
specific
a
one.
big state. It's a
It is
big
a big
state.
state.
What if they
Yeah.
sue you in northern Florida? Well,
Yeah.
I mean,
No,
they
I'm
may
not.
not have jurisdiction over
Yeah,
you, but
I'm not going to Tallahassee. That's like 8 hours away. Nope, we're good. We'll stay right
yeah.
here. All right, nice. So those are like the seven must-haves. You said those are in your blog, right? I'm gonna have to pull those up and like go over
Well,
them.
there's one more that I'm like not thinking about. So now there's eight. But yes. I'm like,
Have
I need my
you?
computer.
This is just out of my curiosity and maybe some story time. Have you dealt with any issues maybe that creators have had, like real life examples of not either not having these, or I don't know, maybe that somebody's come to you specifically and asked you about something that has happened?
Um, my biggest real life situations have been during the negotiation periods where I'm finding that UGC creators don't realize that they have a voice, and that these things can be negotiated. And so when they reach out to me and they're like, "Hey, this is what I want, and this is what they're saying is in there," and I'm like, "It's not in there. They're lying to you, and it doesn't matter if they're lying to you or if they're protecting themselves, because the second that you sign that contract, anything that you are talking about doesn't exist unless it's in the contract." The other real life example I've had was after the fact. They were going through negotiations, they signed a contract, and unfortunately, it was only like it was $150 for one video, and she was doing two videos. And then a very weird situation where they were like, "Oh, we want to add a third one." And luckily, she sent over the two drafts with a watermark on them, because when it came around to the third one, they were like, "Oh, well, we wanted the third one, and now that we can't get the third one because they wanted to amend it, we're just going to cancel the contract and walk away from it." So and then they didn't pay her, right? And
Ugh.
so she comes to me and is like, "Well, what do I do with that situation?" And unfortunately, your options can be limited depending on what routes you want to take, right? So fortunately, they weren't able to use her content because she watermarked it, and we were able to send cease and desist letters, so that you're telling them, "Hey, you're on notice that you're first of all that you're in breach of contract. Make sure you don't use my content, because that's unlicensed content that you have your hands on." Number two, we were able to send demand letters, and I actually need to follow up with her and see if they paid. So a couple demand letters were sent, and then, from there, she's going to have to decide, if they pay her, wonderful. If not, she's going to have to decide if she wants to follow up with small claims court, which is not super expensive, and you don't need a lawyer to do that. Obviously, it probably would not be cost effective to hire me um, to file a lawsuit, at that point.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's kind of where I've seen the biggest real world things. So mostly during the negotiation process where UGC creators are really being taken advantage of with their legal blind spots. And that's what I've been calling it lately, because it's like you just don't know what you don't know.
Right.
And when you're coming, and I'm finding that brands or agencies are really taking advantage of that, unfortunately.
Boo.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like you mentioned earlier, it they do have like a whole legal team. They have, the bucks to throw behind it, even if you do want to go for it. So definitely,
Mhm.
some simple ways that you can protect yourself, like you mentioned, is putting the watermark before, sending out a video, especially if you haven't
Before
been.
you're paid. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely before you. I mean, unless like I have some brands that I've worked with in the past and I know they're good for it, so I just send it whatever, and I know they'll pay for it eventually. Sorry, I'm getting a lot of pings in here, but definitely if you've never worked with a brand before, or if you don't know like anyone, like you don't know the point person, because there are some also that I've never worked with a brand before, but I know the point person, so I trust the point person. I don't know if that's me being gullible or whatever, but I know them. I've built a reputation, a relationship with them, and I know that they're gonna follow through, at least try to follow through on my behalf. So definitely watermarking. I always try to get at least 50% up front, because I mean that's a lot of work that you're doing even to get to that point. Like,
Absolutely. Yeah, because she already filmed, edited, and sent and watermarked them and sent
yeah,
them to awesome videos. And it's like, okay,
yeah,
what gives kind of thing. Obviously they were trying to swindle her, I think, really. But in order to protect yourself, you really can kind of weed out those scammers or those people that seem legitimate, because if they're not willing to pay you 50% up front, then they may potentially not be serious about it. But like you said, I think it really comes down to building that trust. And so, when you have this, I don't want to say when you become legally savvy, but you have this confidence in your ability to negotiate contracts, and you handle yourself as a professional business, whether you're a sole proprietorship or an LLC, you're still a real business.
yeah.
And when you're able to present yourself like that and maybe get that 50% off, or 50% off, you get 50% up front, or even 25%. Honestly, I feel like when people have money on the table,
Exactly.
they're like 10% even. It's like, show me the money. Let me know that you're committed to this. And I think what's hard for like beginning UGC creators is they do have that intimidation factor, and they really, really, really want to get paid, right? They're sick of doing gifted collabs. They want to get into paid ones. And so they're willing to kind of, they put themselves out there, which obviously you should, but then some people take advantage of it. Unfortunately, that's just the way it is. So in order to maybe help yourself a little bit is getting that some of that money up front at least.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's becoming a little more prevalent, I feel, as
Mm,
UGC is becoming more of a marketing tactic that more
yes,
brands are using.
yes,
Agencies seem to be taking. I have never had a problem with a brand directly reaching out to me and not, but like in agencies, they are
yes,
trying to keep as much, and understandably, they're trying to make as much money as they can, but it's not. It's obviously it's not okay. But yes, they do
yes.
take advantage of the baby UGC creators, and you know, I've had a few reach out to me and be like, "Oh no," I'm like, "Well, I'm sorry that happened. Don't
It's
send yourself without watermark. Like, don't get paid up front." What else that, like, I mean, those are really the things. I mean, I always try to get them on the phone too, because if you speak to a brand or an agency on the phone, like, you have somebody, like, and they have a
right.
face, like a voice to it, and like a personality, and maybe they'll feel bad about trying to pull one over you. So try to get them on the phone as well if you can. And apart from that, it makes you just seem more professional too and more committed. So I try to do that as much as I can. Um, and yeah, I mean, it's just a matter
What
of.
about you? Have you had any real world like legal stuff go down?
Fortunately, not.
Okay.
I actually just started working with a brand that it's going to be like a revenue share model. So like depending on what is made from, I guess, the ad that I send out, that I give them. So they're going to be sending over those terms and all that good stuff. So I might have some questions soon. Um, that's the only new one that I've really had to do. But most of the time, I like to send out my contract, like even before they mention it, I'll be like, "Hey, I got one," and most it's fine. They'll take mine. And when they have sent over theirs, some of the key things that I do look at as what they love to put in there, like in perpetuity, as in they're going to use my content forever and ever and ever. And
Mhm.
I'm always like, I always limit paid content. So if they're going to use it as an ad, I give them about 3 months. If they're going to use it as organic, that's not something that I'm going to sit there and track. I just know myself. I'm just not. So if it's going to live like on their social media, or if it's going to live on their website, or like if they're going to use it as an email, I kind of just let it be. But if they do decide, or if at some point I see it as an ad, they're going to have to pay for it because that's what they're paying for.
Right.
But no, fortunately, I have not had any issues with legal stuff or payments. I had one that like was just taking forever to pay at the beginning, and it was one of those things that you mentioned, like it's a confidence thing. I'm like, oh, they'll pay eventually, and eventually, luckily they did. But it was like 2 months later, and like they just kept stringing. They're like, yeah, we're gonna talk to HR. Oh, yeah, we're gonna send the account. Yeah. They just kind of strung it along for 2 months. But anyway, I mean, now it would be more like, no, you need to pay now. And I think like you said, a lot of that just boils down to that confidence, like to feeling like, this is my work. I paid for it. Bobby B. Joyner says, never apologize for being a powerful woman. Exactly. Like, this is my work. Like, I made this for you. You're using it. You're making money. Oh, and so I work with a UGC brand now, and I see all the ads that UGC creators make for them and how much
Yeah.
money those ads make. And
Okay,
we're like,
right.
we're like getting the short end of the stick here because they make so much money on these ads. And like, no, like do not be afraid about asking for, even the not so good ads make money. Like they
Yeah.
usually get their money back at least. So I have not seen an ad not make any money. And they've
Well,
run
and
over
that's
like
kind of the point of the UGC, right? Is you don't want it to look like an ad. So that's kind of the whole point of it is, to be the whole user generated ad.
absolutely. So I mean, like it's insane to me when brands are like, oh yeah, like $25 for like 30 videos. It's like, no. I've actually started answering with like, no, I know how much money you can make off my ad, and when you have the budget for it, this is my price. These are my terms, and if you want. And I've actually recently lost like a few deals because they're just like, oh well, no. I'm like, okay, well, and I feel like those small, like those low paying jobs, like those, the ones that come at you and kind of are a little bit fishy or sketchy are always the headaches anyway, because they want like 85 revisions, or they want you to do another hook that you did not agree to in your deliverables that you should definitely put in
Yeah.
there if you're doing more hooks. And that is another thing about deliverables. Like I will sometimes, bend the rules a little bit if it's a brand again that I trust and that I want to build a relationship with. If, they're asking for like
Mhm.
some raw footage on like a certain part or something, or if they're asking for an extra hook or a different call to action, I will usually be pretty flexible on it. Oh gosh, I have 5 minutes remaining of TikTok today. It's gonna shut
What?
off. I have a timer that like times me. Otherwise, I would be on here all day. So
Oh, that's
I just got the warmer. Okay, well, if it shuts off for a second, I'll pop back on. It shouldn't.
okay.
It shouldn't be. It shouldn't disrupt the live, but my screen will probably go black for a second. Um. Yeah. So I don't. I don't hold completely fast to it if it's the brand that I'm trying to work a relationship with. And that's okay too, because you're building that relationship, you're building the trust with the brand, with all that good stuff. So yeah, but it's really important to have those with brands that you obviously have never worked with and all that good stuff.
Yeah.
I wanted to
I will
ask.
say,
Go ahead. No.
oh, I was gonna say, I really like how you said you send over your contract before they even talk about it, because what I have been noticing is, we think that the brands have a legal team, and maybe they do, maybe they don't. But what I've been noticing is a lot of them are just repurposing like their influencer agreements. And
Oh,
so they're just repurposing an agency's repurposing influencer agreements. And
oh,
so they're just repurposing an agency's repurposing influencer agreements. And
oh,
so they're just repurposing an agency's repurposing their brand agreement to make it sound like them. And so what's happening is you're missing really important terms in these things. And so it is better almost to, instead of going through and taking the time to revise theirs and to try and figure it out,
yeah,
sometimes it's better just to be like, hey, let me send you mine and have them edit yours and send it back. So that way you already know what that everything is in there that you want. And then when they redline it or they edit it, then you know where to focus your attention. And then that's where you're like, if you don't have me to ask about it, that's when you start Googling it, right? Like,
yeah.
why did they take this out? Or, why would this be important for them to want to change this aspect of it, right?
Or
Because
Twitter.
because the real secret to that is a lot of them don't actually. I feel like everyone is just pretending, and like they don't have that legal team behind them either. Because I have seen some terrible, terrible contracts from agencies and brands
Yeah,
that you can tell they just copied and pasted a bunch of stuff together, and that doesn't necessarily mean that it's gonna be a proper contract.
right. Yeah. Uh, funny that you say that because also, isn't there a thing that like when you have a contract signed, it has like electronically rather, it has to be signed like through like DocuSign or some kind of official thing like that for it to be like your signature to count? Or like can they send me a Word template and I just like draw my signature on it and that
So
count?
that's a great question. I know in like California and some of our courts, we count electronic signatures like that as a true contract. So I
Okay.
think it's really going to depend on your state and your
Okay.
state laws. But the best way to do it is through the DocuSign and the Honeybook and a legit actual signature,
Right.
because there's no way for you to prove that they actually signed it,
Right.
right? So like if they're including just like their own little electronic signature to it, then they can maybe try and get out of it by saying like, oh, that we didn't actually sign that. That's made up kind of
Yeah.
thing,
Yeah, definitely. That I keep mine on. It's called Dubsado. Is this?
kind of
Yeah,
thing.
yeah, definitely. That I keep mine on. It's called Dubsado. Is this? Receive some from brands that it's just a Word document, and they're just like, okay, you can just sign it. I'm like, what? Okay. Receive some from brands that it's just a Word document, and they're just like, okay, you can just sign it. I'm like, what? Okay, and then like I save a picture of it and I sign it on my phone, and I'm like, I feel like this is not legit. Like,
I mean, at the end of the day, it may not be, it may be, but it kind of just depends on what they're trying to enforce the contract for, right? So it really comes down to who's going to argue who's going to argue that there wasn't a contract. Like if you have an email back and forth, a lot of that can be considered a contract, right? So like sometimes you don't have to have a formal document to create a contract. The contract law is, if you have an offer, they've offered you something and it's for consideration, so for X amount of dollars and you accept it, that is in itself a legally binding contract. So technically you can make a contract through emails, right? Where
yeah,
you're emailing back and forth and then they say, like I said, as long as you have those elements, right? Where
yeah,
you're emailing back and forth and then they say, like I said, as long as you have those elements, you could emailing back and forth. And then they say, like I said, as long as you have those elements, you could technically make a contract through email. So it kind of depends if there's what we like to say circumstantial evidence that they signed it, then that would be really hard for them to try and get out of that.
okay.
So
Okay,
Denise,
I can
I
hear
want
you.
to ask, so like
Oh,
I don't understand this whole life thing. So like do you have the same like questions and stuff on the bottom of yours? Are we seeing the same stuff on the bottom?
so I get my own questions or my own viewers and my own questions, and you're getting your own viewers and questions. And I
Got
just
it.
want to do a quick shout out. My VA, Catherine, is on here, and she's the bomb. You rock. Thank
Oh,
you.
nice.
Um, she's saying that I'm currently trying to figure out how to sign this e-contract. Tell me a little bit more about it, or maybe we can chat tomorrow about it. Because yeah, most of the time they send it like through like Sign Now or DocuSign or like Adobe, whatever, or through Bonsai or I forgot whatever. But anyway, they send it through a thing, and those count as legal thing because I think it was like a. I know in Florida that you have
Yes.
to have
Oh,
it signed like
absolutely.
the
Yes.
timestamp and with like
Because it
you and the
verifies. Yeah. There's a
yeah, yeah.
verification.
What happened? Sorry.
Hey,
Sorry. That was my kickoff. So I have TikTok limited to 2 hours a day, and yeah, like it
you're
has. You
obviously
can do it
over.
inside TikTok. Yeah, I obviously over it. Yeah, you can do it inside TikTok, and you can shut it off. Like you can also put like little reminders, like every 10 minutes to get off of it. But that's not helpful for me because it lets you like snooze the reminder. So I just
Oh,
10 minutes. But anyway, yes, I'm okay now. But normally it's 2 hours a day, which I always go over. I don't even know
I
why.
don't even want to know.
Yeah.
Especially with having an online business, it's like you're constantly checking because like I don't know, for me it's like I know when I ask people questions, I don't want to wait a week to hear back from them. So I'm neurotic about it because I'm like, oh, new comment, let me respond
I
now. Or like, oh, I
know.
got an email, I gotta respond now, which I should probably get better at, but that definitely adds up with the social media time.
I mean, I think also though, like those kind of being fast. I mean, this is a different topic off of legal stuff, but being fast, responding, all that kind of stuff grows your following faster because you're on the platform more and you're interacting more. So it's
Oh,
like
well,
catch
good.
22. Yeah, it is good, but it's like, ugh, I don't really want to do this. So Twitter has like you can turn the notifications off at a certain time of day. And I do that. Again, it doesn't really help because I go in and check it when I'm like laying in bed anyway. But all the platforms have like a reminder, like turn this off or stop looking. And I don't know, you guys can set them and ignore them like I do.
Yeah, that's too funny. So
Yeah.
do we have any questions that we want to push out to anybody that has any legal questions or
I don't. I had a couple people pop in, but they're not in anymore. And yeah, I don't recall. I feel like maybe we should. I think I did announce it on Twitter, right? That we were going live. Like, okay, I don't know.
hmm
Thursday afternoons are not the night to go live. But let's see. I did have a question that somebody asked in one of the like a Twitter thing. Um, what like it actually has to do with the rev share map. Like what would be I guess this will be my question too. Like so I have the rev share model going now. And the deliverables are like 4 videos per week. But like they're not paying me for it. So like what if I don't deliver the 4 videos per week? Like
they're not paying you? What are you
well
just
so
doing
the
it?
I mean I don't have the contract yet, but the idea is like we're gonna work together and I'm gonna deliver 4 videos per week and I will get paid based on how well those videos do
Oh,
ad spend. Like what if I don't deliver 4 videos? Like what if I don't have time or what if I don't want to or like I don't
well, what
know.
does your contract
Mostly it's
say?
gonna be what if I don't have time because that's four
Yeah,
videos that I'm essentially not getting paid for. And I don't know how I feel about this model. I mean, mm, being on the DTC side and seeing how much UGC ads can make, I'm excited about it because I feel like you could make money, but
yes,
not being paid for you're not going to get paid for every ad because not all of them are going to be winners. So
right,
I don't know. We'll see how
right.
it goes. But yeah, like, I mean, what are they going to do if I don't turn in those four?
Right? Okay, so I mean that's something that you would want to cover in your contract, right? Is so it's like if you don't deliver on time, is it considered a breach? Or, does is are you given flexibility if you decide that you want to end it, right? So with or without cause. Like if you decide that you don't want to give it by a certain time frame,
Yeah.
you would just address that in your contract. Like all those questions, like whatever you answer to that, it's written
Just stuck around there.
into the terms, yeah. And that you can terminate it at any time with or without cause. The other thing is if you're doing these videos, are you getting product? Because if you're
Yeah.
getting product, then technically you are getting paid with that product. So
Um,
even though you're not getting money, you're technically still getting paid. So I mean, but at the grand scheme of things, are they going to have you return it? Like, what would
okay,
be?
well, so then that leads me into like a gifted collab question. Do you suggest contracts for gifted collaborations?
Oh, absolutely. Yes. Anytime you do any type of work, even if it's for free, um, you're going to want a contract because it just puts out exactly everything that you want. So that's my biggest thing with contract is like it doesn't just come down to litigation or what happens if somebody breaches it. It really is so much more than that. Contracts are really about setting the expectations of the parties and really defining your working relationship. I went to a an entrepreneurial networking event the other night, and
For your
we
car
were all.
got towed?
I know, yes, sucks. It really
Sorry.
sucks. At least it wasn't stolen. That's what I keep telling myself. At least it wasn't stolen. Um, but I'm sitting there and I'm talking and I was like, oh my gosh, I love contracts. And they all start laughing like you. They all start laughing and I'm like, oh, they're all laughing because they thought I was joking and I'm not
Oh, so
joking.
serious.
I actually, yeah, I actually really do love contracts because it's not, I know, now you're laughing at me too. It's because it's more than like the legal and the litigation. It's so like when you're doing gifted or you're doing free or you're being paid, I don't care. It doesn't matter. Put it all in there so that everybody knows what's expected of you and what's expected of them. And then honestly, it just gives you so many less legal headaches down the road and a lot less disputes. It helps with the miscommunication, make sure that you're communicating appropriately and really takes care of a lot of ambiguities or things that you hadn't thought of even, right? So like that's the best part about writing contracts is kind of like what you were just asking. And it's like you really have to think about all of the possible things that can go wrong, like what you're saying is like, okay, well, what happens if I don't feel like doing it? What happens if this? What happens if that? It's like, those are great questions
Been
to ask.
there.
Yeah, because you're going to want to address that, right? Like, what happens if you have, um, if you're doing that and it's a month long contract and someone decides that they don't want to do it anymore? Well, is there a cancellation policy? So a lot of that was what you're saying is a cancellation policy. Can you cancel not just the contract, but can you cancel each deliverable? Okay, so like you can write that in. So like say for the first week video, if you as a UGC creator decide that you don't want to do that, you can either merge it or transfer it into another week's deliverables, or you can decide to cancel it and then lose out on those profits for that week.
Yeah.
Right. And so you can really do like a sliding scale or just a full on cancellation policy. So that's what it would be best probably in that kind of situation.
Great. Now I gotta go think about this for real. Like, this is what I think. This is what I don't like about contracts. You need to like think of the whole, exactly like you said, any what ifs and all that kind of stuff. And like sometimes working with brands is not as straightforward as it's in the contract.
Yeah.
And it just, I feel like, I mean, I don't go back, to be honest, I don't go back and amend contracts or change things if things change throughout the, working period. which probably I should. I know you're going to suggest that I
Um,
should.
Well, okay, there's the ideal world and then the one we're living in, which is, more realistic. And, you can actually modify a contract by your behavior, right? So like if both parties after the fact are doing certain things and for instance, if one of your terms in your contract is waiver and you're saying like, oh, if neither party does this thing and we don't enforce these rights, it's not a waiver of my rights. If you include that in there, then maybe not. But, you can modify contracts based on additional things. So a lot of times with courts and stuff, we'll look at what happened afterwards. Was there a written modification of the contract? So in your situations, like maybe you have emails going back and forth, could that have potentially, through the parties' behavior and through those emails, modified the original contract? And a lot of times you will find that that was an amendment. So a lot of times it doesn't have to be like what you're thinking, like an actual like amendment to
Yeah.
UGC client contract dated such and such. Like I know. I think I need like to get my mental health checked out. Why do I
Yeah,
love
I'm
contracts?
already
It's
like
so
thinking
weird.
like no.
I know it's like, but see, that's what I love. I love thinking about all the things that could possibly go wrong, and
Uh,
then, and no, but then thinking of it, it's like it
and
becomes,
prepare for the worst, and but
yeah,
hope for the best. Like just I
yeah.
mean you're protected all around. Like I feel it. I feel that. Okay.
And then adding it in, I think so. Like my next one that I want to add in is kids. I see a lot of mama
Yeah.
creators,
Oh
and
yes.
they're asking about their kiddos, and there's a lot of things that go with that one. It's I want to add something into these contracts about the kids, but there's it's going to be one of those if then scenarios where it's like if this then that, if this then that,
Yeah.
because there's not going to be a one size fits all.
Right.
So I know you were on that thread too, and it was like it really depends. Is is the brand contracting your kid? So like
Yeah.
are you, your kid, and your UGC creator being paid by the brand? Like is your kid being paid for the brand?
Yeah.
Or was it just like a you thing? Like you just included your kids for like your own creative idea on how you wanted to promote it. It's like it's going to change, you know, what
Right.
is
There are some
in the
brands that'll straight up say, "Do you have kids? And can your kids be in
okay.
the video?" And
Okay.
I mean, I don't put it in my contract, but I always stipulate I will put, their. I try not to show their faces, so I'll use their hands, I'll use their backs, I'll use whatever. I'm not gonna put their faces in, and if it is their face, it's gonna be like from far away where you're not really gonna see
Mhm.
it. And so far, no brand has pushed back on that. But filming with kids is like a headache.
Crazy.
Like
I couldn't even
it takes,
imagine. That's
yeah,
insane.
it takes like another like 2 hours. So
Yeah.
I've actually considered like I'm gonna start charging if you want kids in
That's
it.
not,
It's gonna
yeah.
be more. Like
Absolutely. I think that there should be like a universe, like industry-wide standard that it's like if you're going to include the kid, it's going to be X amount extra. Because let's be honest, that's another talent. That's another model that they're paying for. And if you go back to influencer marketing or to advertising, that's another model that you're paying to be at the studio, right?
right,
And so like they're getting that from you. It's not just you. You're working with two people now. And my mind goes to, okay, well now if you're your own business, so like, so I heard you have a LLC, you have an LLC, right? Okay.
yeah,
So like with your LLC, there's that whole thing about making sure that you're not an LLC's alter ego, right? And so as your LLC, you're going to want to hire your kid
I
because it's
do.
not you. You want to hire the kid to
Mhm.
make sure that there's that separation of boundary because you're not your business. Your business is your business. So your business needs to hire your kid with like
Yeah,
a talent release form
yeah,
and and what's great about that is you can pay your kid from your LLC for that
I
brand
do.
video, right?
I
Yeah.
do.
And then like
Yeah.
put it into custodial Roth IRA, and then I mean, it's like, oh, that's
Your kid
so
starts building
amazing.
wealth. I know it's so exciting. I actually just started paying my daughter last month or the month before for apart from being into in videos, like she's my camera person sometimes. So
Oh, that's awesome.
she gets
Yes,
500
but
bucks a month or so for me. Yeah, to be my and then yeah, she it goes into her little bank account that she doesn't know about. But it's hers, and it's
But
starting
why
all
not
that
make the
right now.
brand pay you more, right? So it's like it's not coming out of your
Exactly.
cut,
Not coming out of my
right?
pocket. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So now it's coming from the brands because that was a new thing where it's like, the brand wants to have into perpetuity rights or work for hire, but your kid's in it.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, it's just like, I
No.
mean,
That's like a
yeah,
hard
yeah, I
no.
mean, like
I
that's
mean, it
literally like
depends
a
on the
parent situation. Like I honestly, yeah, like so like you said, you don't feel comfortable having your kiddos' faces in it, but like other people don't care. So it's
yeah.
like there's such like a weird thing, like you don't know down the line how that's going to be, but then that also comes back to your contract, right? So like you said in your videos, I'm assuming you don't do work for hire, you do more of usage rights,
Yes.
right? Okay,
Yeah.
so like whether your kid's in it or not, you own it. So they can never do anything with it inappropriately, if they wanted to. Like you own that. So it's like you own the video of your kids. So that's helpful. Oh, you're freezing.
So yes. Go ahead about the
Oh no, like you keep freezing. I
yes.
don't know if it's my end or your end. Um, but yeah, so that's just
Sorry, I
another
had a
thing.
spam.
That's probably just another thing to get into, of just either having your LLC formed or, your sole proprietorship and then really getting down to the contract terms and, me being a weirdo because I like all that stuff. Um, and then also just
Not
trying to figure
weirdo,
out
it's useful.
the kiddo stuff, of, how to include them and how not to include them.
Yeah, absolutely. You just gave me an idea for like my next few tweets. We're gonna tweet about this because it's a huge thing. And I mean, you saw in that thread, like there are so many UGC moms out there, and we do get asked to use our kids all the time. And yeah, we should be charging more for them because the work is more. Like that's another person. Like
Hmm.
yeah,
Well, and I just saw another thing about the health and wellness. Do you do a lot with health and wellness and like doing upcharges for that?
I don't. But I did see. I think was it you tweet about it? Somebody tweeted about it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I was asking because I'm getting, a lot of my tweets are because I get DMs from people and I'm like, I don't know, let me go check. Let me go check what that is. Because, everybody is just a wealth of information, right? It's like, well, if I don't know it, hopefully somebody else does. Um, but yeah, so I didn't know if that was a thing too. So it's like, okay, charging more for potentially for health and wellness, potentially charging more when your kiddos are in it, and then also figuring out how that looks in terms of contracts.
That makes sense for health and wellness. Why what sparked that question for you? I mean, like I've done like protein shakes, which is fine, but I would imagine like supplements and stuff that are not at all FDA approved and like potentially
Right.
like seeing stuff that you just don't really know. I mean, what would you suggest there? Like what if you like get sick from the product or something? Is that something that you might want to include in your contract? Like if I'm sick, you're gonna have to
Well,
pay the hospital bills.
okay, right. Well, I mean, yeah, potentially, because I mean, eventually that ends up being like tort liability. And
Mm,
so, you would be suing them for, injury to you as a
mm,
person. But you can also include contractual damages, and then pick, but you would probably have to sue them at that point. And
yeah,
then also prove that you got sick
right from there.
because of the product, right? And so that may be a reason to charge more. Um, and you really don't have to use the product when you're doing UGC ads. It's more you have to use the products when you're doing influencer marketing.
Right. Oh,
Right.
really?
Yes.
Well, that's interesting. Like you have to use it as an influencer marketer.
If you're saying like, oh, this product's great, or you're talking about a product that you've never used, then
Mm,
it's not truthful. And so then it violates the FTC disclosure rules. So I
mm,
feel like when it comes to, the health and wellness and influencer marketing, you actually have to use the product. You have to be You have to be a consumer of the product to be influencing others to buy it.
Mm.
You're
Hmm.
no longer just a hired model or a hired UGC creator doing ads. You are the advertiser.
Right.
So in order to do that and to be truthful and honest, you have to actually have used it.
Oh, nice. Okay, so it's okay if you're a little dishonest with UGC. I mean, I try, obviously I try not to be, but you don't want to be. But
Well,
I'll tell a funny
it's
story. I got
different.
like a curling iron at one, and it was impossible to use this curling iron. Like it just it didn't curl like right. Like it was impossible to use. I couldn't figure it out. So I used my own curler to make my curls, and then I used I'm like, this curling iron is great. Uh, I gave it to my cousin, and my cousin has that figured out how to use it, but I could not for the life of me. So I'm like, I don't know. I feel like it's so dishonest. And she's like, oh my gosh, shut. It's fine. I'm like, but okay,
Well,
now I don't feel so bad knowing that it's not terrible. Like you're not under any like real obligation as a UGC creator to be 100% truthful.
well, it
Hmm.
ends up going on to the brand, right? So like
Right.
if the brand, I mean, obviously it depends on what you say. I mean, like there's still a stuff, but the brand ends up being the advertiser, not you in that kind of situation.
Okay. Cool. So I just made that video for fun, right? And then just sent it to the brand, and they're the ones using it as an ad. I mean, it's not me. That's where the liability comes in. If somebody finds out.
Right?
Do not send this out to anybody, you guys. Be quiet,
Yeah.
loose. Keep that quiet.
Yeah, I'm like,
Yeah.
wait, I think I've seen that.
No, no, wait a minute. Is this the curler that didn't work? She said it didn't work. It worked
Yeah,
for
yeah,
my
it's
cousin,
totally
okay? It's
different.
just me. I couldn't figure out how to maneuver it. Okay.
Right? Oh my gosh.
That's too funny. I haven't been dishonest about anything else though. Like I actually did send back a product once because it was like it was a supplement and it was like supposed to give you energy and all this kind of stuff. I don't normally do supplements, but I did this one and I'm like, I don't feel anything, like literally nothing.
Mm.
And I don't want to be promoting something that like you're saying is supposed to give you focus and energy and pep you up and it's like nothing. I'm like, this feels like a placebo type thing. No, no. So anyway, I sent
Oh,
it. It
really?
was a small deal and it was when I was first starting out. I didn't send it back. I just told them that I didn't want to do it. And they're like, okay, it's fine, just keep it. And it's there. Like, but
Well, yeah, I mean that's like a judgment call, right? Where you're just like, I don't even want to be associated with this brand
yeah,
because let's be honest, as a UGC creator, your face is now associated with the brand regardless, even if
right.
it's not, influencer, like your face is with it. So that's a great judgment call too when you're like, oh, I don't like this, like depending on your usage rights or if you're work for hire or however long that is, now you're associated. So yeah,
Yeah.
that's definitely one of those things you got to think about.
Yeah, I mean, that's why I try to take, you get selective with your brands I mean, in the beginning, I think you just take whoever you can because you're trying to get the experience. But yeah, as you get more, you pick your brands because yeah, you're going to see those ads. You're going to see the ads in the TikTok Creative Center. You're going to see the ads on Facebook. You're going to, your friends
Mhm.
are going to be sending you those ads and you're like, ooh, you weren't meant to see that kind of thing. So fortunately, I haven't had any embarrassing ones or like some products that I wouldn't suggest to them. But yeah, that's definitely something to keep in mind as well. But we're rolling around here to the 8 o'clock hour, or it's a little bit past 8 o'clock. Do you have any closing remarks or anything you'd like to share with us? Any final thoughts?
Yeah, just keep on trucking. I mean, just follow I mean, the same thing, just follow your instincts and definitely push back on brands to negotiate things. And if you need help, I'm here with questions.
Yeah, and if you need help, I'll point you to Alyssa. I will tag you on any question that I say. I'm like, Alyssa, go answer this.
I know. Yeah,
No.
no, I appreciate that because I don't always see that stuff. And then
Yeah,
the ones I have been tagged in, I'm like, oh, that was like, I know this. I can respond to
I
this.
can help.
So I appreciate that when people tag me and they're like, hey, what do you think on this? Like, it's so helpful.
Good. Yeah. So
Okay.
anyway, yeah, have a good, Thanksgiving. Thanksgiving's coming up, and if we
Oh
don't get
yeah.
together again before Christmas and New Year's, I don't think we will because I have a lot of stuff going on, and I imagine you
Yeah.
do too. So I will see you next year. You know, happy
Okay,
Thanksgiving, happy
perfect.
Christmas, or happy holidays, whatever you celebrate, and happy New Year.
Oh yeah, same to you. And thanks everybody for joining.
All right, take care.
Bye.